Hi, and thanks for watching. Let's spend a few minutes looking at the frame of Chen style Tai Chi. When I'm talking about frame, I mean the way the body is held, the internal structure that is maintained through the entire routine. It helps define Chen style Tai Chi for the tradition that it is, and is sort of the foundation on which everything else is built on. And at the same time, is the thing that through practice we are always continually trying to refine. The frame of Chen style Tai Chi is characteristic of the style. Every activity we do, whether we recognize it or not, sort of has a frame. If we're sitting at the computer, there's a body structure, not a very good one, but a body structure that we tend to fall into. When we're playing badminton, there's a structure that we hold. When we're doing boxing, there is a structure and a frame to the body. But these are different activities from Chen style Tai Chi, so we need to understand the frame of Chen style Tai Chi so that we are able to adopt those characteristics and bring that through into our practice. It actually starts in the formal training with our standing posture, right? We have the standing posture here, Hun Yun Zhuang, and this actually is the start of training the frame. From here, the postures in the routines, so in other words, the ends of each of the moves from Buddha's warrior pounds a mortar, lazy tying of coat, single whip, so on and so forth. All of these are informed or maintain that same frame. And if we pay attention to the postures, this helps develop the frame. In the same way that as we develop an understanding of the frame, this helps us maintain and refine the postures. We want to get to a point where the structure is one that we just inhabit automatically, so that we don't have to constantly fiddle with these sort of foundational things, and we can focus on the additional details. So let's break it down a little bit. Let's look at what this frame means and how it's held in the body. And where we'll start is with the lower half of the body. We want something where we have our weight set so the knees are slightly bent, weight over the heels. Now we want the hips open and relaxed, and that in part means that we rotate the thighs out and then brace out at the knees. From there, instead of having it so that the toes point out away from each other, we want to actually take the shins and roll them in, so the toes are pointing forward. So even though the thighs are rotated out, the shins rotate in to point the toes forward. This actually changes the positioning of the thigh bone into the hip, so it actually affects the hip structure. The difference between this with the toes pointing out to here, toes pointing in. The toes press against the ground, so they grip the ground slightly. This is different than scrunching the toes, which actually brings the feet further away from the ground. We just press the pads of the toes gently against the ground. This stabilizes the ankle, and so that we have a foundation from the ground through the ankles, through the knees, up to the thighs that is stable. The hips, though, have to stay relaxed, because if we relax the hips and the low back, then we create the start of the free rotation in the lower abdomen. So the rotation, the dantian rotation through the lower abdomen, which is really the thing that drives all of the Chen style Tai Chi movement, needs to find this stable structure to contain it. Now you can do that dantian rotation without this stable structure, but then it's something that not only grinds the knees, but it has a quality that floats and is insubstantial. Right? So if we have the thighs rotated out, bracing the knees, rotating in at the shins, pressing the toes to stabilize the ankles, then relax the low back and the hips. Then we have this rotation that happens through the torso, lower abdomen, but it doesn't lose the stability that we want. This also helps clarify one of the more common questions, which is what should be the angle for my pelvis? And I usually just tell people it's neutral, and don't focus on it. Focus instead on relaxing the hips, relaxing the low back. Obviously, you don't want something where your butt is sticking out and you have way too much tension in the low back here, so you're not arcing the back. At the same time, you're not slouching, like setting the pelvis at a forward angle. Instead of thinking about the position of the pelvis, though, is something where if we focus on this, relaxing the hips while maintaining the structure through the legs, then we have a position where the angle of the pelvis will shift a little. It has a movement that's available to it and actually is focusing more on the important thing, which is finding a way of generating a motion that begins in the lower abdomen and then can be translated out from there and expressed through the rest of the body. So that's from basically the waist down. The rest of the body, we need to lift the torso up. They talk about extending to the top of the head, Bai Hui, the acupuncture point on the top of the head, but leave the chest empty. So leaving the chest empty, of course, means that we don't create stiffness and tension through the torso by lifting and thrusting out the chest. But by the same token, it also means that we don't collapse at the chest and have our Tai Chi being here, right? Lift through the torso, but leave the chest empty. Settle the Qi into the lower dantian. From there, the arms come out at a scapular angle, so not straight out in front, not straight out to the sides, but on an angle in line with the scapulae. And then so this braces out the knees, or braces out the elbows, similar to how the knees are braced out. And then from there, we fold in the arms, the forearms, and extend to the fingertips. So in other words, the structure in the arms and the legs, the upper limb and the lower limb, are the same or very similar, where there's this outward rotation and bracing out to the knees and the elbows, and then an inward rotation and containing that happens through the shins and the forearms. There's a movement through the wrist so that the wrist is allowed to bend, but it's not something where it becomes held in a stiff position. Right? Extend to the fingertips. There's a variability in terms of this hook posture, whether you're having it with the tips of the fingers or the pads of the fingers. And the movement of the other arm is essentially something where when we come to a position, we can set the wrist. But setting the wrist down, say here, is different than stiffening the wrist so it becomes blocked, so that there's no extension to the fingertips. We want that extension to the fingertips. We want an ability to rotate through the wrist while still bracing out at the elbows. We also want a movement that's a free movement that's possible through the upper arm as well. So this is why the shoulder needs to be relaxed and set. Open across the chest, roll the shoulder blades down. So instead of being here, open across the chest, set the shoulder blades down. Allow for a free movement, a rotational movement through the elbow. So the elbow can do essentially a circle. Right? A circle is different than it collapsing, and it's different than it doing just an up and down, forward and back motion. It's one where it has a relaxed movement through the shoulder and upper arm, while still maintaining an outward pressure with the elbows. So instead of it coming through here, collapsing, it's something where it comes in, but then expands back out. And this setting in and expanding out is not a straight up and down kind of motion. It's a rotational motion. So it comes in, it moves forward, it comes up, it rolls out. Moves in, moves forward, moves up, and rolls out. It has this rotational motion. So instead of something where we're here and we're trying to keep this motion here by just moving in a single line, it's something that has a circular motion to it through the upper arm, which is expressed through the elbow and then by extension into the hands. Right, so this is silk reeling. So silk reeling is something which is helping us find the motion that's possible while we maintain the frame. Key points with the frame: press the toes against the ground, heel, weight on the heels, brace out the knees, relax the hips. Lift the torso, extend to the elbows, extend to the fingertips. Allow a smooth circular motion through the arms. And allow that to be driven by a rotational movement through the lower abdomen. So from a rotational motion through the lower abdomen and having that expand and extend through to the arms, while at the same time keeping the lower half of the body in the proper frame so there's not a lot of wiggling that happens that causes instability. Keep the lower half of the body connected to the ground and stable while the rest of the body is free to move in a smooth, circular manner, coiling manner. So these are some of the general posture or general guidelines around finding the frame. And again, the way to find the frame is not by doing lots of movement. It's by doing lots of posture work. And when we're doing the postures, if we're holding the posture, say it's the Huan Yuan standing posture, we're not doing it thinking about gritting our teeth and finding as much stamina as we can and being stubborn about holding the posture. We want to hold the posture and we want to think about, what is this alignment like? What does it feel like? Get the body automatically wanting to come into this posture so that every time we come to a new posture, here, instead of it being here, it maintains some of that quality. The feeling in the hips, the feeling in the bottoms of the feet, the feeling in the elbows and the shoulders and the back is the same here, here, here. So this is the key for finding the frame. And as I said at the beginning, this is an ongoing process. When you have the frame and you find the postures and you go through the sequence, you will find more ways to refine that frame, and that in turn helps refine your practice in general. So I hope this information is helpful for you. Keep training, keep practicing, and take care.